Shohei Ohtani is getting dangerously close to something that Major League Baseball has never seen before. Not almost, not eventually, not someday in the distant future, right now. And the scary part for the rest of baseball is that most people still haven't realized how close he actually is. Because while fans are busy arguing about home runs, MVP races, World Series predictions, and whether the Dodgers can win another championship, Ohtani is quietly moving toward a level of baseball history that may never be repeated. The numbers are already ridiculous, the accomplishments are already historic, but what he's chasing now is different. This isn't about another MVP. This isn't about another All-Star appearance. This isn't even about another World Series ring. This is about separating himself from every player who has ever picked up a baseball. And if he keeps playing at this pace, the conversation about the greatest player in baseball history may be over sooner than anybody expected. Because for the first time in a very long time, baseball isn't asking whether Shohei Ohtani is great. Baseball is asking where exactly he belongs among the immortals. And the answer might make a lot of people uncomfortable. Let's start with a simple question. How many players in baseball history have won multiple MVP awards? Quite a few. How many players have won championships? Thousands. How many players have hit 500 home runs? Only a select group. How many players have won Cy Young awards? Again, a select group. Now here's where things get interesting. How many players have done all of those things while also being an elite pitcher and an elite hitter at the same time? The answer is zero. Not Babe Ruth. Not Barry Bonds. Not Willie Mays. Not Hank Aaron. Not Mickey Mantle. Not Mike Trout. Nobody. Because nobody has ever attempted what Shohei Ohtani is attempting. And more importantly, nobody has ever succeeded at it. That's what makes this moment so fascinating. For more than a century, baseball has separated players into categories. Pitchers over here, hitters over there, power hitters, contact hitters, speed guys, defensive specialists. Everyone has a lane, everyone has a role, everyone has limitations. Then Shohei Ohtani showed up and ignored all of it. When he first arrived in Major League Baseball, plenty of experts thought the two-way experiment would fail. Some believed he should focus only on pitching. Others believed he should focus only on hitting. A lot of people thought trying to do both would eventually wear him down, and honestly that criticism sounded reasonable at the time. Baseball is hard enough when you're only responsible for one job. Ohtani decided to take on two, and not just two jobs, two of the hardest jobs in sports. Imagine asking an NFL quarterback to also play linebacker. Imagine asking an NBA superstar to lead the league in scoring while also being Defensive Player of the Year. Imagine asking a Formula 1 driver to compete in two cars at the same time. That's basically what Ohtani is doing. And somehow he's making it look normal. That's the dangerous part. People have become so accustomed to seeing him do impossible things that they no longer react the way they should. A 450-foot home run, that's Shohei. A 100-mile-per-hour fastball? That's Shohei. Stealing bases? That's Shohei. Dominating an MVP race? That's Shohei. Winning a World Series? That's Shohei. The impossible has become routine. And when impossible things become routine, people stop appreciating just how extraordinary they really are. But history hasn't stopped paying attention. History is watching every single game. Because every single game brings him closer. Closer to records. Closer to milestones. Closer to a level of greatness that baseball has never witnessed. Think about what happened just a few seasons ago. Ohtani became the first player in MLB history to produce elite pitching and elite hitting numbers over a full season in the modern era. Then he won another MVP, then another, then another. Each time people said the same thing. Surely he can't top this. Surely this is the peak. Surely we've seen the best version of Shohei Ohtani. And every single time he proved them wrong. Every single time. That's why the current situation is making so many baseball analysts nervous. Because they recognize a pattern. Whenever people think Ohtani has reached his ceiling, he discovers another level. Whenever people think the story is complete, he adds another chapter. Whenever people think history has finally caught up to him, he starts running away from it again. And now he finds himself approaching what may be the most important stretch of his entire career. Not because of one game, not because of one season, because of what all of it means together. Because greatness isn't measured by moments. Greatness is measured by accumulation. One accomplishment becomes two, two becomes five, five becomes 10, and eventually the pile becomes so large that nobody else can match it. That's exactly what is happening right now. And if you're a baseball fan, you might be watching the beginning of something that future generations will spend decades talking about. The biggest mistake people make when talking about Shohei Ohtani is comparing him to normal baseball players. Because the truth is, he's already moved beyond that conversation. The real comparison isn't Shohei versus today's stars, it's Shohei versus history itself, and history is starting to lose. Let's talk about Babe Ruth for a moment. Whenever somebody wants to explain Ohtani's greatness, they immediately bring up Ruth. The comparison makes sense on the surface. Both were dominant hitters. Both pitched. Both became larger-than-life cultural figures. But here's the part most people never talk about. Babe Ruth was never asked to do what Shohei Ohtani is doing. By the time Ruth became the legendary home run machine that changed baseball forever, he had essentially stopped pitching regularly. He became a hitter, a phenomenal hitter, one of the greatest hitters ever, but still primarily a hitter. Ohtani never made that choice. He kept both jobs, and somehow became elite at both. That distinction matters more than people realize, because what Ohtani is doing isn't a recreation of baseball history, it's the creation of entirely new history. He's building a category that didn't previously exist, and when a player creates a category, it becomes incredibly difficult to compare him to anyone else. Then there is Barry Bonds, the most feared hitter many baseball fans have ever seen. A man who could change a game with one swing, a man who shattered records, a man who forced entire teams to pitch around him. But Bonds never threw 100 miles per hour. He never struck out elite hitters. He never carried the responsibility of being an ace pitcher. Again, a different category. Then you look at players like Hank Aaron, consistency personified, an icon, a legend, a player whose accomplishments stood untouched for decades. But Aaron wasn't taking the mound every sixth day. Willie Mays, one of the greatest all-around players ever, but not a pitcher. Mickey Mantle, not a pitcher. Ken Griffey Jr., not a pitcher. Mike Trout, not a pitcher. Do you see the problem? Every comparison eventually breaks down. Because baseball history has never produced another player who checks every box Ohtani checks, and that is why his current pace is making historians so uncomfortable. They don't know where to put him. The traditional categories no longer work. The old measuring sticks are failing. And when the measuring sticks fail, the only thing left to do is create new ones. The numbers become even crazier when you zoom out. Think about this. Most Hall of Fame players spend an entire career building one legendary resume. Ohtani is building two simultaneously. One resume as a hitter, one resume as a pitcher, one resume as a pitcher. And somehow both are elite. Imagine splitting Ohtani into two separate players. One player only hits, the other player only pitches. There is a legitimate argument that both versions could have successful major league careers. That alone sounds ridiculous, but it gets worse. Because both versions would likely be all-star caliber. Now imagine combining them back together. That's the player baseball is dealing with. That's why front offices obsess over him. That's why television ratings spike when he plays. That's why stadiums fill up whenever he's scheduled to appear. And that's why every conversation about baseball eventually seems to circle back to the same person, Shohei Ohtani. The scary thing is that he still appears to be improving. Most athletes begin declining in their early 30s. Reflexes slow down. Recovery becomes harder. Performance begins slipping. Ohtani seems to be moving in the opposite direction. His baseball IQ continues growing. His understanding of pitchers continues growing. His command continues improving. His ability to adjust keeps getting better. The game keeps evolving. And somehow he keeps evolving faster. That's why some executives around baseball have started quietly discussing something that would have sounded ridiculous 5 years ago. What if we're watching the greatest baseball player who will ever live? Not one of the greatest. The greatest. Period. That conversation used to be impossible. Now it's becoming unavoidable. And every game he plays pushes it closer to reality. Now comes the part that should make the rest of baseball nervous. Because all of the accomplishments we've talked about so far, those might not even be the most important part of the story. The most important part is what comes next. Shohei Ohtani is still building his legacy. He's not finished. He's not looking back on his accomplishments. He's actively adding to them. That's what makes this so dangerous. Imagine if he wins another MVP. Imagine if he adds another championship. Imagine if he wins a Cy Young Award. Imagine if he continues hitting 40, 50, even 60 home runs while remaining an elite pitcher. At some point, the argument stops becoming emotional. It becomes mathematical. The evidence becomes overwhelming. The pile of accomplishments becomes too large to ignore. And that's exactly where baseball appears to be heading. Right now. Today. Not years from now. Not decades from now. Right? Because every season seems to create another impossible headline. Every season seems to add another chapter nobody expected. And every season pushes him closer to territory that nobody else has ever reached. Think about what future fans might say. They won't say they watched a great hitter. There have been great hitters before. They won't say they watched a great pitcher. There have been great pitchers before. They'll say they watched the only player who mastered both. The only player who forced baseball to rewrite its definitions. The only player who made historians rethink what was possible. That's different. That's bigger. That's permanent. The truly historic athletes don't just dominate their sport, they change it. Michael Jordan changed basketball, Tiger Woods changed golf, Wayne Gretzky changed hockey, Tom Brady changed football, and Shohei Ohtani may be doing the same thing to baseball. Future generations might grow up believing two-way superstars are normal. Why? Because Ohtani showed it could be done. But they won't understand how impossible it looked before he arrived. They won't understand how many experts said it couldn't work. They won't understand how many people doubted it. They'll only see the results, the MVPs, the championships, the records, the highlights, the history. And that's often how legends are created. The struggle gets forgotten, the greatness remains. What makes this moment special is that we're still in the middle of it. The story isn't finished. The final chapter hasn't been written. The biggest accomplishments may still be ahead, and that means every game matters, every start matters, every home run matters, every season matters. Because every one of those moments moves him closer to a place that very few athletes in any sport have ever reached. Immortality. Not fame, not popularity, not superstardom. Immortality. The kind that survives generations, the kind that survives eras, the kind that survives arguments. That's why Shohei Ohtani is getting dangerously close to baseball history. Not because he's chasing one record, not because he's chasing one award, not because he's chasing one championship, because he's chasing something much bigger, a place all his own. A place beyond comparison, a place beyond categories, a place where the only meaningful comparison is between Shohei Ohtani and every player who has ever lived. And with every passing season, that comparison becomes more favorable to him. That's the reality facing baseball. History isn't coming. History is already here, and it wears number 17 for the Los Angeles Dodgers. The next few years could determine where Shohei Ohtani ultimately ranks among the greatest athletes who have ever competed in any sport. The numbers are already historic. The accomplishments are already legendary. The legacy is already secure. But if he keeps going at this pace, we may eventually stop asking whether Shohei Ohtani belongs among baseball's greatest players, and start asking whether anyone else belongs in the same conversation as him. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more Shohei Ohtani updates, Dodgers coverage, and the biggest stories from around Major League Baseball. And let us know in the comments below. Where do you rank Shohei Ohtani among the greatest baseball players of all time? Because the answer to that question might look very different by the end of this season. We'll see you in the next one.